Welcome to My Morning Cup, a podcast produced by Costa Media Advisors and brought to you by the generous support of the Tennessee Valley Authority. To learn more about TVA's impact on our community, follow TVA on Instagram @TVA and on Twitter X @TVA News. My Morning Cup, where we have interesting conversations with genuine people. I'm Mike Costa, your host. My guests this week are Sheila and Dane Boyington. This dynamic duo have been focused on training and workforce development with their company Thinkin' Media for nearly 30 years. Sheila and Dane, before we find out how two University of Florida chemical engineering grads found their passion in Chattanooga, let me ask, what's in your morning cup?
My morning cup is always Indian chai, and I love a lot of ginger in it. So it's kind of my time to sort of relax.
Chai with ginger, any cream or sugar?
No cream, no sugar. Just really, it wakes me up in the morning and makes me feel alive.
Yeah, what about you, Dane?
Orange juice. So I grew up in Florida.
You got to have orange juice.
Well,
Anita Bryant.
My home was in a subdivision that was carved out of an orange grove.
Oh, cool.
So we had 3 orange trees in the yard. And, sometimes when it's that time of the year, my mother would say, go out and squeeze a gallon of orange juice, which I hated, which is a big, big job. But yeah, so we grew up with orange juice, and drinking that every morning. I still do every day if I can at all help it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. I've long admired what you guys do, and there's a connection between us because my oldest daughter and I think your youngest daughter were in the same class at GPS.
Yes.
And I've known about Thinking Media for a long time, and I want to talk about that and where you are today. But I really want to start with your story. How'd you guys start? Now, Sheila, I know you were born in Gainesville, and Dane, you were born in Baton Rouge. So who would like to start and say your origin story?
I'll let Dane do that part.
Well, in Baton Rouge, my father was HR director of the Baton Rouge Hospital, Baton Rouge General. And they both my parents went to LSU, actually, so they're Tigers.
Oh, wow. So you got LSU, you got Florida.
Yes.
And
well, yes, we were talking before we started. Sheila and I are Gators, so that will come up later in the story. But yes, LSU. But moved quite early to the Tampa, Lakeland area, Florida, where I really grew up in Florida. So I consider myself more of a Floridian, although I was born in Louisiana, and therefore the orange groves and the orange juice and all that. And that led to eventually where I met Sheila when she came to Florida, but she started off somewhere else.
Yeah, so I grew up in North Carolina, but my mother immigrated by herself from India in 1956.
Oh, my goodness.
By herself. My dad also immigrated by himself from India in 1956.
What drove them to do it by themselves?
Well, number one, there were hardly any women, maybe close to none at the time in the U.S. But my mother came from a very learned family. They were very much into education, and she had 3 sisters and 1 brother. Her brother was the editor of the largest newspaper in India, Economic Times, and he was Indira Gandhi's economic advisor. And my mom, actually, I only read after she passed away that she came to the U.S. to study and then go back and be in politics in India. And which she very well could have done, but she met my dad.
Yeah.
She actually did her law degree and her master's in political science, worked with Harry Truman. Like, she really was a notable person. And my dad got his PhD in chemical engineering, also at University of Florida. Hence, I've been a Gator my whole life. And they met. They didn't know each other, but they met. They were from the same part of India, but they actually got married in Gainesville without either of them meeting their parents.
Now, that's pretty unusual
and
for the Indian culture in 1958.
Oh, completely, absolutely almost forbidden in a way.
Yeah.
I knew I was born 3 years later, so my mom wasn't pregnant. But really what happened, they were from sort of different socioeconomic backgrounds. Honestly, my mother was from, more of the Brahmin, the highest caste at the time, and my dad wasn't. And so anyway, they got married. Their families were totally happy for them. When they went to India, when my mom was pregnant with me a couple of years later. And then, we moved to North Carolina. My dad was head of research for Olin Chemical, doing pulp and paper technology. And we lived in Brevard, which was a town of 6,000 people. There was no other brown kid anywhere in sight. So there were all the white kids or Black African-American. That's it. And so really, I grew up, I was just talking to somebody this morning, with a lot of prejudice.
Oh, I bet you did.
Because people didn't know which one I was. There were many days that no one even wanted to sit with me at lunch. It was just really a hard time. And I was the oldest of 3 kids. So my sister and brother had a little easier time because they were following me, but I was the oldest. I'm probably close to the oldest person that was born and brought up in the U.S. with 2 Indian parents. I've never met anyone older than me that actually has done this. And so, I faced a lot of adversity, I would say, in that, but I was a very good student. And so just kind of dove into being, academically solid and that sort of thing. And then we moved to Florida when I was in 11th grade. I was thrilled to be in a big city because there was more diversity. There was more ways for me to be, kind of integrated into that. And then as Dane mentioned, we went to University of Florida, and we actually had a class together every semester we were there. I tell people we met in chemistry class because we had chemistry and studied together for years. And then, friendship turned into a marriage.
I just want to go back a minute as growing up and being the only brown kid. And you said you really, because you were a good student, focused on study. So you pretty much put everything into that.
Very much so. I mean, again, that's just was what my claim to fame was, right?
Yeah.
I think I was just smart. I wasn't really athletic.
Yeah.
I danced. I took ballet and tap and jazz,
That's
whatever.
You did music, though. You did.
But
Yeah.
I mean, I was not good. I was not good. I was always third chair. It didn't matter what I did. I played the clarinet and marching
Well, it's
band.
more than I did. I was only a bookworm, so
Yeah.
all I did was.
Well, and your
did my
mom made you
academics.
take typing, and
Well, okay, that was. Well, I mean, that was high school, and I was not valedictorian because I got a B in typing, but I always felt like one day typing was going to be a good skill, and
Comes in
those
handy
days, when
today.
I did
Yes, it
typing,
is now.
we were on a mechanical,
Yeah.
actual clickety clack typewriter, and but it wound up being a good skill because I can still type well.
So let me make sure I heard you correctly. Because you got a B in typing,
Yep.
you weren't the valedictorian.
That's correct.
correct.
Oh, what a thing.
And I was not valedictorian because they would not count my credits in North Carolina as advanced classes.
Really?
So I was actually 4th, but they had to take us out to 4 decimals to actually separate the top 5 students.
Wow. That was a competitive school.
Yeah, there were 800 students in our graduating class.
So what was the difference for you in growing up in North Carolina and Florida? Was Florida a sea change?
Yeah, completely. Because we went from a town of 6,000
Yeah.
to Tampa, Florida, which had
Yeah,
so many
international
people, and I had Hispanic friends, and just so many different varieties of people there, and just loved being in a big city. I really enjoyed that much more than living in a small town. We loved our life in Brevard. Don't get me wrong, because your neighbors, we didn't lock our doors. We had so much fun. I was talking to somebody the other day. We made up games. There was no internet back then, obviously. And, I was very good. I actually was very good at basketball and softball athletically for a short Indian girl. So, I played a lot of sports just in the neighborhood. And actually one summer I taught my parents into sending me to basketball camp. I'm not sure. Went to basketball camp.
There's a hidden talent we
There's
didn't
a
know
lot
about
of,
you.
yeah.
I always hear about how good a basketball player she
Well,
was.
one of our first dates, we did play racquetball, and I beat him. I don't know if he let me beat him.
You want to impress a girl. You don't.
Oh,
just
yeah. That's a
pound her
good
into the
story.
ground now, do you?
Good story.
Yeah.
Good story.
Oh, I can't get to
I'm
that one.
sticking to it too. I'm
Yeah, I know.
absolutely sticking to that story.
I'm with you, Dane. Because I've done that same thing.
Yeah, sure.
Now, when you were growing up in Tampa, you had a number of part-time jobs. You were delivering the newspaper at an age you shouldn't have been delivering the
Well,
newspaper.
yes. It's always, as we mentioned, I wasn't athletic, so I wasn't doing sports after school. But yes, I started sort of subcontracting my brother's paper route in middle school. So the point was, and I think Sheila's the same, we've always worked. And the deal was in my family. And in the old days, you worked if you want spare change. We weren't rich, we weren't poor. But if you want some spare change, you worked. So I delivered newspapers, and then I bagged groceries, and then I worked in a phosphate mine and sorted and crushed rocks.
Oh, wow.
And I also worked in an orange juice factory. So
That wasn't the backyard to go get some fruit off the tree? A real one?
no, a real orange juice factory, a packaging plant that produced bottles. But the point really that I impress upon young people nowadays, and when we were in high school back in the late 70s, it was hard to get jobs. I tell people about, kids nowadays would not even think of, a lot of kids we know would not think of wanting to get a job at McDonald's. I wanted a job at McDonald's. I could not get a job at McDonald's. And then I said, well, I'll work in a grocery store. So Lakeland, where I was at that time, is where Publix is from. And so I wanted to get a job at Publix, and you could not get a job at Publix unless you had an in there. It was just too hard. So I worked at Cash and Carry, which was a B grade grocery store and farther from my house. But
Hope they're
that's the
not one
only
of your
job I could
sponsors.
Not anymore.
But how hard we had to in those days work to get a job, and people don't want certain jobs nowadays, and it's just amazing to us.
That's a great point that I didn't really think about, because when I was growing up, you're right. You had to know someone to get the good jobs, and McDonald's was a great job, or the grocery store. You needed your dad to know someone or your mom to know someone to make a call to say.
Yeah. And it's just totally different nowadays, and that attitude all the way through college. And I'm not putting it down that we have a choice of better jobs nowadays. It's a great thing, but we also have to be cognizant of the people in our society who we need to take jobs like that. And of course, we're going to get later into workforce training and development, but it's very important that people want a wide variety of jobs, and we have a wide variety of jobs available in our society, and we need to train people for those. But I know I'm jumping ahead.
We'll just go where it goes. But I mean, that's a great point. And all those jobs are adding up and giving you the experience you need to get to where you want to go.
Yeah, I mean, I actually babysat a lot.
Did you?
That was kind of my thing. Back then, we earned 50 cents an hour. And I loved babysitting because I love kids. Of course, we'll probably talk about, we have some grandchildren now, and I'm addicted to kids. I love kids so much. So I always enjoyed that. And then when I was going to college, my dad's like, you have to get a job this summer. I'm like, okay. So I started the same thing going around, and I finally got a job at Burger King, which I loved. I did the cashier. I was obviously very good with, math was my thing. And so, just really enjoyed that and enjoyed meeting people. But probably one of my life lessons, which I've spoken about before with others, is that I had a secret shopper that came, and I did not know, obviously, secret shopper. So I, served them their food. And then later on, they put a report on the board of how well you do.
Oh, really?
Yes. And they put your name and they put what you did. And I did everything super, super well, except I did not say thank you to him. And so for me, that was a lesson that I carried through today. Pretty much anybody that does anything for me or anything like that, they get a handwritten thank you note from me. It's kind of something I taught our girls, and I teach all the people that work for me over the years. Like, thank you should be, it doesn't matter. Even if somebody's doing something for you, you're still going to thank you at the end of your email. I want to see thank you at every end, because we just don't thank people enough.
And that's another great point. I've long sent thank you notes, and I don't do it as much as I used to, but it's so unusual today to get a thank you note.
People love it when they get, even if they go to dinner at somebody's house, sometimes I just write a thank you note and they get it 2 days later and like, oh my gosh, your note was so sweet.
And what a way to make yourself memorable, particularly if you're younger and your peer group's not used to it, or even if you're just interviewing with someone.
Yep. And that's that single one lesson that was at Burger King that kind of has permeated my entire life.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird to think about, but that was it.
Yeah. I do want to touch back, Dane, on your newspaper days. So you and your brother delivered newspapers. How old were you doing that?
I probably was 6th or 7th grade.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you got in under the,
well, yeah, because he was officially the owner of the route.
So he subcontracted you.
Yeah.
Was he fair to you?
Yes.
There's a whole story there. But
yeah, he was. There's a lot of other things in life, but we're good friends now. Put it that way.
We're very good friends now. There are
What's the age
travel buddies.
separation?
4 years. He's
Okay.
older. Yeah. But we're enjoying our life now.
We're very, very close with them now. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So you're doing typical high school things.
Yeah.
Why in the world would you go to the University of Florida?
Well,
no, I'm kidding.
Best school in the state.
Well, I mean, I was involved and interested in science, and her father was a chemical engineer, so we were both sort of interested in science and engineering fields. It's the best in the state of Florida, and it's a state school, so that's sort of why not.
I applied to 2 schools, Georgia Tech and Florida. I got cold feet about going to Georgia Tech because at the time there was nothing but engineering there. It was strictly engineering school. I thought, oh my gosh, what if I go and I don't like engineering? What am I going to do? So then I opted to go to Florida, which I'm very thankful I did because I met Dane there.
So you both were chemical engineering majors.
Majors. Mm-hmm.
And you've always had a love for, I guess, chemicals.
Well, yeah, and I was always interested in science, and my chemistry teacher in high school was a very good teacher, and we spent some time together after school doing some extra credit experiments, not for credit, but just for fun, honestly. And I actually do have this thing, and I have this belief that if I wind up going to heaven and think about you meet people there, that sort of belief that you meet people. And the one thing I say to myself, if I wind up in that situation, the one person I want to meet actually is my high school chemistry teacher, because he passed away before I got my PhD in chemical engineering. And I want to tell him I got a PhD in chemical engineering. So
it's a very cool thought. What was his name?
Mr. Mariani.
Mr. Mariani.
Yes.
So he obviously had a big influence on you.
Yes.
And drove your.
He was a good teacher. Yes, he was.
To be a chemical engineer.
Yes. I want to be a chemist, but then later on I figured out that chemical engineers make a lot more money than chemists and do more interesting things. So yeah, I did get changed in that regard, but yes.
And that's a hard degree to get too.
It's not the simplest thing.
Not the simplest.
Sheila, you said you loved math. So how did you move towards chemical engineering?
My dad was a chemical engineer. So I always was a good Indian daughter. I followed my dad. And again, chemical engineering is a lot of math.
Yeah.
So math on its own, was not as interesting to me. So, the chemical engineering part was. And, I think honestly, in some ways, it wasn't as much of a conscious decision as just like doing it.
Was it kind of expected?
Well, because honestly, I wanted to be a teacher. And then, quite frankly, I actually looked up, and a teacher made half as much money as a chemical engineer. We both are talking about the same thing here.
Yep.
And I said, I could work half time being a chemical engineer, make the same amount of money I could be a teacher. I'm going to be a chemical engineer. And so that's what I did. And I just, entered the program, and really, we loved our years at Florida. It was so fun. Actually, for me, it was a very different experience because there were so many Indian graduate students. So my whole life growing up, I told you I didn't have anyone in my contemporary that were of Indian descent. And so when I went to Florida, then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, there's all these Indian kids. So I had a bunch of Indian kid friends and stuff, and really enjoyed that time so much, getting to have, Indian friends, because I didn't have any before, and culturally seeing how similar we were, because my parents did what I thought was the best, raised us with the best of both worlds, sort of the work ethic and other things, around the Indian culture. And then, obviously taking all the fantastic opportunities that are in the United States. And so putting those together, I thought they had raised us really well to kind of enjoy both parts of life.
That had to, as you said, not be an eye-opener, but say to you, oh, wow, I've got a whole group here that I hadn't been exposed to my whole life.
Yep.
Chattanooga seems to have a strong Indian culture.
We're totally integrated in that, although there are a lot of people we don't know now.
Yeah.
But we've lived here for 37 years. And that was the other thing I will say. We went to school in Berkeley for our graduate work. And in Berkeley or San Francisco, being Indian was nothing special. So I was used to a life where anytime you saw an Indian, you talked to them.
Yeah.
Well, I did it in Berkeley where we lived. And then I was like, no, they didn't really want to talk to you. And quite frankly, they didn't really want to talk to me because I also was married to a white American.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird. And, so we lived there for 5 years, and we loved our years there. And there's plenty of stories there as well on things we learned. But when we moved to Chattanooga, we moved into an apartment complex. They ain't got a job at DuPont. And moved to an apartment complex. And literally in less than a month, I knew everybody in the building. It was like everybody talked to you. Like no one talked to you in Berkeley. We lived in a huge building. We didn't even know anybody. It is one of those things I try to explain to people. Like our children live now in Chicago and San Francisco, which we love, and having so much fun there. But it's not the South. Like the South is like everybody's your friend. They'll talk to you. Even if we have all the issues, it's still like super.
Yeah.
One of our stories of that first month in Chattanooga, and I worked at the DuPont plant, so we were living in an apartment out in Hickson. And we went to the Northgate Mall, our first time to the Northgate Mall, and we're walking up to the door of the Northgate Mall, and there's a police officer there. And the police officer stops, opens the door for us, and says hello, and holds the door open for us. And, we're like, what does this police officer want with us? Why is he so interested in us? It's like, well, people are just friendly here. And we tell our daughters, we have these discussions to our days. They obviously live in California and Chicago, and they talk about, would they ever want to come back to Chattanooga? And I'd say one thing about Chattanooga is that everybody is very friendly here. So it's a nice and easy place to live. And we concentrate on working together with others on things we agree on.
Yeah.
Finding the things we agree on. And that's a great way to live in Chattanooga and to have a great life here.
But the Indian community here is amazing. I mean, there are probably, I don't know now, maybe, 1,000 plus.
Yeah.
It used to be very small when we moved here 36 years ago. I remember we went to the first time we celebrate Diwali, which is the equivalent kind of a Christmas celebration of lights, and I cooked food. They told everybody bring one dish. We went, it was on Brainerd Road at one of the churches, had let them have their hall, and we had a little program. Some kids danced and everybody ate food afterwards. And from that moment, we continued to really just build relationships. And most of the people, I mean, many have passed now, but many also are still here. And, they're still like our family, because my parents lived in Florida. And, I was very family oriented. And so we really needed that family culture. And so that's that. We still have a group every Tuesday night. We eat dinner together with two of our closest friends who cook food for us, vegetarian. I eat vegetarian on Tuesday. And but it's like family. It's like having a family night every week.
Are you vegetarian all the time or just on Tuesdays?
No, it's weird. I'm vegetarian on the 2 tea days, Tuesday and Thursday. Don't eat meat. They're specifically religious significant days in Hinduism. So these are
That's
2 days.
Interesting. I never knew that.
Yeah. There are a lot of people that do that. It's just kind of, for other people, it's like, well, I'm sorry, what? You don't eat meat on Tuesday and Thursday, but you eat all the other time. Yeah, well, yes. And we have plenty of totally vegetarian friends who never eat meat or eggs or anything like that. So
My youngest daughter calls herself a selectitarian. She's vegetarian until I say, you want to go to Tremont and have a burger?
Yeah. Okay, well,
That's she'll wind up. We don't cook a lot of beef at home for various reasons, but once we go out to restaurants, she'll have a nice steak and enjoy that.
From time to time.
Yeah.
I want to get back to Berkeley real quick. You went out there because, Dane, you were going for your PhD. And,
Correct.
And Sheila, what were you doing at that time out there?
I was looking for a job.
But
I did.
Again, in those days, it was tough, even for a person with a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering.
1983 was not a good year to graduate with a chemical engineering degree.
No.
It was a very difficult year.
No, 83 was tough.
Yeah, I actually applied to be a bank teller. I did all this stuff. I got a job with a company called XL that made the honeycomb that planes put in to have strength but not weight. So I was in the lab working on that, which I enjoyed.
Was that Black and Beach?
No, then that was like an hourly job. But while I was doing that, Black and Beach called me and offered me a real engineering job, and so I took that and I worked for them for the time that we were in Berkeley.
And how many years was that?
5.
5 years.
5 years.
Oh, that's a long program.
Yeah, well, because it's skip a master's.
Yeah, combined master's and PhD.
You do it all
Okay.
together.
Yeah,
so.
Wow.
And Dane won't brag on himself, but they only take 40 students from all over the country. It's fully paid, and on top of it, they pay you $2,000. In 1983, they were paying him $2,000 a month on top of that.
That's pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah, it
I'm
was
sure
good.
you worked very hard.
He did, but it was great.
hard work. Yeah, my father I went to tell my father that I wanted to go to graduate school. My brother, very well done, but he was an architect, so he went to MIT to study architecture, and of course, they had
That's
to finance
expensive.
somehow because he didn't have an assistantship to pay for that. And so when I went to tell my father that I wanted to go do my PhD, and I could see that sort of ashen look on his face when I was sitting there stumbling over himself, and I said, "But they pay me for it. It doesn't cost you anything." It's that's wonderful, son. Please go ahead.
Suddenly, you were the favorite son.
Yeah. Yes.
So 5 years in Berkeley.
Yes.
And I'm sure that's culturally obviously much different than
very,
than
It's different.
very
Florida.
well. And we also got involved in a peace movement. To be
Oh, yeah?
honest, we were part of a peace movement at the time that was, addressing nuclear war and all that and everything. And so I think one of the things that particularly taught us was also about just speaking in public. And, we kind of got comfortable doing that.
And this was what we call a white linen peace movement. We would have, literally teas with china and sandwiches and stuff like that. So we weren't protesting in the corner, but you did have to recruit people to come. So we would stand in a corner and invite people to our apartment. And so we would, ask people, would you like to come over to our apartment for some refreshments and talk about the dangers of nuclear war? And that was the come on line. So it was, you learn.
Did it work?
In Berkeley,
In Berkeley, yes.
Yeah, it was fine.
Yeah, it was fine. It was fine.
I like that.
Yeah.
Come have some tea and talk about nuclear war.
Yep.
That's correct. I mean,
So what got you to Chattanooga? You get your PhD and
right. We interviewed with several companies, had interviews and offers from several chemical companies.
All the companies, Alcoa, Dow Chemical, Unicarbide, W.R. Grace.
And DuPont was one of them. They came to the campus, interviewed me, and said, we'd like to send you out to Chattanooga for an interview. And the people here were very friendly. It was a very interesting project at the time. It's not a secret at the moment, but DuPont was looking to get into the carbon fibers business, which was sort of new, the whole composites, like the stuff that the 787 Dreamliner is built out of. Well, we were just thinking of those things at that time. And so DuPont was looking to get into that business, and the research for that was done here at the Chattanooga plant over in Hickson.
That.
Well, it worked for several years, and then DuPont decided they didn't want to be in the business. It was too competitive, and DuPont was making, some fairly expensive product. I created a high thermal conductivity fiber, which was going to go into the National Aerospace plane, things like space shuttles and National Aerospace planes. It was $3,000 a pound, so it was pretty pricey stuff. And
did you say you created it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, they were making, that was a variant of the products that we were making at the time. But it was very interesting work. And so, the people from Berkeley would say, well, you're going there to work on basically defense industries. And I said, well, it's a product that can be used for various purposes. And it was a good technology, and I really enjoyed doing that.
Haven't a lot of the things that we use in everyday life come from initially defense use?
100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, and let's be clear. We're not peaceniks,
Yeah.
We represent a balanced view on things, and we know national security is very important, and we support that. And so it's all how you use it, right?
Yeah. But one of the reasons we actually chose the DuPont thing, because my parents both of our parents lived in Florida.
So I got you closer.
And I knew I wanted to have children, and this was the closest job to Florida. And then also it was the most money too, which we were happy to learn. We didn't know it.
Dow and DuPont were offered the same money. So
yeah.
Dow was in a suburb
in
of San Francisco and Concord. So it was just a few miles away from where we were living at Berkeley. And so I went back to Dow and I said, well, DuPont in Tennessee is offering me the same amount of money as you are. So, it's more expensive to live here. And so why don't you pay me a little bit more, and we consider staying there? And they said, well, we don't have to pay people to live in California. I said,
and I had a job too.
And I said, well,
Beach.
thank you very much. Goodbye. Yeah. We're going to Tennessee. And never regretted that a moment in our life.
And I had a very good job there as well. So, but would have taken 2 incomes to have a house and all of that. And we looked to here, and we were able to buy a house without 2 incomes. And I really, really valued the idea of staying home with my children.
And you guys moved here when things weren't necessarily great for Chattanooga.
Gosh, no.
That's when manufacturing business was leaving town. And
the first
downtown.
time we came to Chattanooga, they put us in the choo-choo. The second time, they put us in which is now the Marriott, which was a Holiday Inn at the time. Oh. And Dane, we were young kids. Like, we didn't know anything. And we got to eat dinner. And there's this Ashley restaurant in that, I still remember. And it was super expensive. And Dane's like, we're not going to eat there. We don't want DuPont to think we're money grabbers. Let's go somewhere to eat. So we get in the car.
And the only place I know how to get to is DuPont.
So we're driving down
Riverfront Parkway.
Down Amnicola Highway. There's nothing.
Which is, it wasn't much different than it is now. Not much to eat on Amnicola Highway.
There was even less then. And there was nothing downtown. There was a McDonald's, old McDonald's downtown.
Different place.
That was it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, where are we moving to?
Yeah, because you're coming from Berkeley. And
San Francisco, which had a million restaurants and such excellent food. And we came here and we really did not eat out for the first
We ate at Bojangles that night.
Yeah, we ate at Bojangles that night, but we really have not we didn't eat out for the first 5-7 years because there was nothing better than what we could cook at home because I love to cook.
I moved here 99, 2000, and up until about 2005, 2006. Yeah, that was still kind of true.
We came in '88, so we really lived long before that.
We've seen the town change.
Yeah, we've seen it.
It's a wonderful town now.
It's fantastic.
And I love it. But we've seen the aquarium built. I think Hamilton Place Mall
was just opening
when we moved here. But we've seen the aquarium built and downtown become renovated, and all these things have changed since we originally moved to Chattanooga.
Were you thinking you were going to be here a couple of years, then move on?
No. In those days, if you joined DuPont, you assumed you were going to retire from DuPont.
But also you had to go overseas or do
Well,
other
I
things
would
if you wanted
transfer.
to move
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, I would
Yes.
eventually be transferred,
Yeah.
but you assumed you would stay with DuPont
But
for your
he-
entire
yeah.
life.
Yeah, yeah, because as we said, Chattanooga was not what it is today.
No.
But always, even in DuPont, though, people who were transferred into this plant DuPont would try to stay here because all through, people would recognize that this is a good location to be at if you're a DuPont worker.
Yeah.
People love to be in Chattanooga.
Now, how long were you with DuPont?
About
before
9 years.
About 9 years.
Until we decided to start our own company.
And where did that come from? What was the driving force there?
My father.
Yes. Yes.
My dad. He was like, he went out on his own when he was, after we were already like in college or graduating or from college even, and knew it was difficult for him, but he did really well. And, but he quickly learned, like, you know what, if you work for someone else, you're going to be fine, but you're not going to be,
You're in
super
wages.
wealthy or whatever. And so, he encouraged us, he watched us, but he also thought Dane's like the smartest person he has ever met and still thinks that probably. And he said, find something to do and I will support you in the lifestyle you're used to living in for 5 years.
Wow.
So that was a true angel funder.
Absolutely.
Happy to say after 1.5 years, we were independent. So that was pretty cool. But we really started, Dane read on, you should tell the story, he read it on a magazine on the plane, something
Well,
about computer-based training back then. That's
Yeah.
what it was called.
Yes,
And,
I mean, it was
taught himself.
It was a deliberate search. It was a deliberate search, and at that time was the first time you could buy your own CD recorder and make your own CDs. Mm-hmm. And a lot of industrial training before that was on laser discs, which were extremely cumbersome and inconvenient. And so I sort of thought, you could put a lot of educational material in that time as engineers, industrial educational material on a CD, and we could make training CDs. And so we actually started off with we did some smaller things for local things like Brock Candy, which is now gone, but City of Chattanooga. But then we actually made a simulator for DuPont on stuff that I had worked out there. And we could, you could actually have a training simulator, sort of primitive training simulator. You could, program it to have certain faults, and then the person who was running the simulator would have to correct those faults as they went through the program. And even by today's standards, it's fairly sophisticated for a small operation like us to make something like that.
So did you do the curriculum too?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
you
we
came up with the
designed it all. So the DuPont thing, we did that. But then a couple of things. One thing, I took the Chamber of Commerce list of all employers and just started going down the list one by one and asked them if we could come and show them what computer-based training could do for their training program. So Dane created a video that was about fixing a video recorder. It created a course. And I remember Priya's hands were in it and all and everything, when we made it. And we would take it to these companies like Duracell and Brock Candy. All these people were like, this is what we can do for you. We can turn your training programs into these CDs and you can give it to people and they can take it on the computer. You don't have to have class. And so Brock Candy paid us our first $1,000. We knew their HR director. He was friends of ours from school. His daughter went to school with ours. And that's really kind of kicked it off. Mm-hmm. But then I think, we decided, and really Dane was kind of behind this. Like we went to some, meetings and met different people, but we learned if we're going to be selling our time, that is never going to scale. Everybody only has 24 hours. So that's all you're selling. If you're making custom. So we were thinking of something vertical market, whatever. And we went to a Association of Training and Development meeting and were introduced to ACT's Work Keys, which ACT College Testing Company had a new assessment they were releasing that was all about testing basic workplace skills. So we saw it actually at Cleveland State, not Chattanooga State, but Cleveland State Community College, and coming home, I still remember it was raining. I was wearing a London fog, very fancy back then. And I said to Dane, we should create a program about that.
Yes, I think you really pushed this.
I said that. I said, let's do that. And he was like, no, we're not. We can't do that. What are we going to do? No. Well, coincidentally, Olin out in Charleston had seen some of the work we'd done, and they were having problems with some of their employees, getting them to train, and they were going to start using Work Keys. So they asked us if we would create a program to do that. Well, God somehow watches you, and we said, well, we'll create it, but we're just going to sell you a copy, and we're gonna own it, and we're gonna sell you a copy, and we did, and literally they helped us kind of motivated us to create. There were 9 different tests that ACT's Work Keys was, and the first 3 we created, and we sold them copies, and then we went on and created all the others ourselves. And my first, and then I just I don't even remember. Kind of Wanza Lee was the head of the Workforce Development Office here in Chattanooga, and so I got a meeting with him. I went and showed him what we were doing, and he bought it to put in his workforce training center, which are now called the America Job Centers. They've been through hundreds of names since we've been involved. And then it just kind of, the rest is history is what I say. I mean, we went on, we had 28 state contracts with that curriculum. We sold it to, state departments of workforce, community college. South Carolina Community College System was the Community Technical College System was our first statewide contract. So they bought it from us.
So how would they use it? Because when I hear ACT, I'm thinking college entrance.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So Work Keys was.
So Work Keys is sort of their workplace interest test. So the ACT test is officially a predictor of success in college. The Work Keys test is a predictor of success in the workplace, and what it measures is your trainability. And to be trainable, you have to have good reading skills and good math skills and be able to work with information and be able to observe things and to be able to, in some cases, do writing. And so these are the tests. And so it would be a math test, but all the problems would be couched in workplace scenarios, not, can you differentiate this equation? That's not really useful in the workplace. So that we developed training and study guide materials for these tests in that type of manner. And
the first one that was a digital kind of, and there were some big companies that kind of came into it as well, but we were a niche. We were really for, very, very niche market.
Well, you were ahead of the curve too.
Yeah, we were very much ahead of the curve, which was sometimes difficult.
Yeah.
But the learning about that in terms of like a small business thinking about a market, is the advantage of that was, one, it was big enough that there were potential customers around the country, but it was small enough that it was off of the radar for people like McGraw-Hill, the big curriculum publishing.
Came in later.
They came in later, obviously, but initially it was off the radar. And 2, it was also a group that got together for meetings every once in a while, so we could actually go to the conferences of Work Keys users, because ACT would gather meetings, or there would be workforce meetings, statewide workforce meetings, and so we could go there and sell this product to people that were using it. And people still use Work Keys today. They still use derivatives of what we created today. So that actually still exists.
Long story short, it was acquired by ACT from us in 2010.
Was there ever a point in growing Thinking Media that you said, okay, it's going to make it?
So,
where was that point?
Well, I think, obviously it just gradually happened. I think it happened. Again, Dane and I worked very hard, but we also worked very smart. Like we're very present parents. We have 2 daughters, Priya, she's 35 now and Nisha's 31. And when they were little, it was very important that we were part of their lives. But then we were very, very fortunate that my mom and dad had enough flexibility to come and stay with them whenever we travel, because we travel mostly together for our work, because we were both going to whatever conference or whatever. And
you're selling nationally, right?
Yeah, yes. And I would make this, I still remember, I used to have itinerary number 19, and it would have take Priya to ballet then and do this. And, my dad would tell the story. I had to go to GPS 3 times today because Priya forgot her this and that or whatever, So, but my parents were they were wonderful in supporting us and coming and taking care of the girls. So the girls had and still do. My dad's 92. He's still really great. And my daughters have such a fantastic relationship with him because he was there for their life.
That's
so
great.
When they have their babies, it's very important that they take them to meet, their great grandfather. And so I think, that was there, but in a lot of ways, if I look back on it now, I don't remember the difficult times, to be very honest with you.
You remember the good?
I really don't. But there were Learning Blade, I would say, which is our next to last product ready for industry. Learning Blade was our attempt. I wanted to take a blank sheet of paper after we sold KeyTrain to ACT. I want to take a blank sheet of paper. Can we make something, and can we just create it out of air and sell it?
Well, but the key to that, and I think going back to the first product with the Work Keys and KeyTrain was the name of our particular product. When we made it, it was not about the technical thing or developing that. It was really about the sales. It's really, and Sheila, the point is, you can have the best product, but if you can't sell it, it's not going to do a darn thing. So you have to go out and work at the sales. And that's where Sheila really was the key, and her ability to go out and talk to people and make connections and remember the customers and drive the sale home and ask for the sale, ask for the money.
So that was kind of your division of duties there. You were
absolutely.
focused on
And when we made it is when Sheila went out and sold like that South Carolina statewide contract.
Yeah.
And then did it again in another state and did it again in another
I
state.
think this is the great thing about both of us. We love and admire each other for what we do. Like I say that, but I only could do that because what Dane created was unmatched in the market. Like we were known that our curriculum helped the students pass that test. And so like that's where we really, I mean, not going to say we didn't have any conflicts. We had plenty along the way. But I think, Dane was really the tech person and the content person and all that. And I was really the relationship person. And
was it hard
and
to
the
keep
management.
those duties?
and management of our staff.
And I was going to ask about staff.
Yeah.
How much staff did you have?
I mean, it ebbed and flowed, but at some point we did have about 15 people.
That's not a big staff for what you guys were doing.
And if you look at the revenue, what we were making was a lot. We didn't want people to know it at the time, but we were really pulling in many millions and really only doing it with the staff of about 14, 15 people.
That's great.
Yeah, we scaled it really, really well, and we figured out how to scale it. And it had value. We had value in that, and it wasn't just people were just buying it because they liked us. It really worked.
But now we also were selling for. There are a few other products out there that could be used for that thing, and we were well undercutting them in price. So. We're making good sales, but we were much cheaper.
I did get told by one person that didn't buy my curriculum, your curriculum's too cheap.
Put a zero on the end.
Yeah, he said. I said, "Well,
in government, my job is to." He was in government. He said, "My job is to spend money."
But, but I think essentially, then our statewide contracts were very affordable for states, and so it was very.
Was it difficult for you guys to keep those duties separate? You stay in your lane, you stay in your lane, but also keep the family and relationship business.
It wasn't that bad.
It wasn't that.
No?
I mean, I don't know. We have a great relationship.
And that's
Sheila's being very complimentary of me in this conversation, but really, it was her leadership, and it was so. She was the president of the company. People sometimes we would go to meetings, sometimes with government people, and they would keep looking at me. It's like, why are you looking at me for? You need to be talking to Sheila.
Talk to her.
You talk to her. I'm here for moral support and technical questions, but so.
I bet there are a lot of growing pains like that over the course.
Yeah, it was, there weren't growing pains. I mean, when, it was so exciting. I remember when we hit $1 million in sales. That was so cool.
Oh, yeah.
That year it was kind of, I think we had just turned 40. So it was kind of fun, that we were, that was kind of a goal. And then it just kept growing and growing and growing. And quite frankly, before even ACT, there was Cengage, Addison Wesley, McGraw, all these other companies had approached us about buying KeyTrain from us. And it never felt like the right fit. And we cared about our products. So it wasn't like we were just going to give it to anybody, even sell it to anyone that just gave us money. So we always cared about where it was going. The same thing, with Learning Blade that we sold, a couple of years ago as well.
Well, and I want to get to a couple things before we run out of time. One is talk about selling thinking media in the companies, and then the other thing I want to get into real quickly is the importance of being involved in the community because you guys are hyper involved.
That came really from my mom. She was always very civic minded, and we were always taught to give back to your community. You don't just take it and you don't give back. And I mean, we're so grateful for the supporters that we've had in this community. It's unmatched. I mean, we just saw Senator Corker this morning, but when he was mayor, there was just a relationship there, and there was relationships with, of course, Congressman Zach Wamp, who was like a big brother to us and also was a minor partner in our company that we just sold. We just, again, like Dane said, always find the things that we agreed on. Education is something most people agree on. And our products were all about, education and preparing the next generation for the workforce and all of that. So I think that was really important. And I forgot what you said earlier.
We just talk about the sale a little bit.
Oh, the sale
why you
of the
decided
company.
to sell. And
well, think if we're writing our life story, we couldn't have written any better than what happened to us. We sold the company in 2011 or whatever. Took a year and a half and hired a bunch of people, created the new, what I said on the blank sheet of paper, Learning Blade that Dane named again. Dane's the namer of all these KeyTrain Learning Blade. He has all the creativity. And then we And then, grew it even larger than KeyTrain. And quite frankly, an investment bankers approached us and said, when do you guys want to sell? Because actually the way it started is we applied for Inc. 5000.
Meaning Sheila. She does these things behind my back.
He didn't know. He did not know I did it. And then we were 4,980 something. And we made the list. But there's an investment banker in New York that's super smart. He's from Atlanta. So he looks for all the companies in the Southeast. And he gets these kids, they call us. They're like, what are you guys thinking? What's your revenue, blah, 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 and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, eventually want to sell. These people called us for 2 years.
Wow.
Once a quarter, just say, hey, is it getting to where you want to be? And we're like, yeah. Okay, then. And of course, COVID, happened and obviously was terrible for the country, but we did have an online curriculum for school. So what do you think happened to us? Our sales went up. And so then we said, well, it'd be just perfect timing, maybe next year, whatever, and the girls were married and, we're hopefully starting families. So we were just prepping ourselves for this. And literally they called us and within 3 months we sold. I mean, there's a very fast process compared to the
once
first
you decided to do it.
Yeah.
I mean
it
the
was
first
very
product,
fast.
first product, ACT sort of nudged us along,
Yeah.
which is a euphemism for they really sort of forced our hand.
They said, we're buying you or we're creating our own.
So ACT, basically told us they wanted to buy us out.
Yeah, and
so
we're
that,
fine.
And that happened. And so the point was we negotiated a price which was agreeable to all of us. And so that worked out well. And in the second time, of course, we were just being courted so much. And we realized there comes a point in your life, not that we're old, but we were getting to the age where we could really think about retirement. Our girls were married. They were thinking about grandchildren. So it just, it seemed like the right time. And we were fortunate enough, actually, both times economically to have been in the right economic climate to have been at an advantage. So it was just very, very
People
fortunate.
always ask us, how did you guys time that? Because the first one was the Recovery Act.
Yeah.
When we sold in 2011, there was a Recovery Act, so our revenue did grow that time as well. And then this was
Well, isn't
COVID.
timing a matter of preparation?
Yeah,
You're prepared.
Well, we were ready for it.
Yeah.
We were ready.
for it. And
Yeah,
we
we were
were
ready.
And we were very conscious about, we're always very conscious about keeping our legal house in order so that, and it's not,
So you can move
not
quick.
meaning that we had lawyers, because I actually served as the company lawyer
Dane is
too.
the lawyer.
I have no formal training, but
No formal training, but we never got in trouble.
But we paid attention to copyrights. We signed, we hired
You were
writers and
prepared.
paid them fairly, but we made sure
We had
all the
transfer
paperwork
of
was in
all
order,
our- yeah.
that our trademarks were registered, all these sort of good things, so that when the time came,
It was very.
it was not going to be a problem. We were not going to hit a roadblock that, you don't actually own this or something like that.
Yeah.
yeah, pretty cool.
Well,
yeah.
we could talk for another hour, but we're almost
Pretty
out
sure.
of time.
I know.
So-
I figured that might happen. I was like,
So before I get to my last question, I do want to remind our listeners who makes all this possible, and it's a thank you to the Tennessee Valley Authority for sponsoring My Morning Cup. Follow TVA on social media to learn more about its multifaceted mission of service, and visit TVA.com/do good here to explore exciting TVA career opportunities. And I'm going to ask you this question individually, so each of you think about it. What would you tell your 25-year-old self is important for a happy life? And Dane, we'll start with you.
Okay. I think part of it is keeping your personal life in balance. And of course, it was unusual that we were actually working together and managed to do that. But still, you do want to pay attention to your personal life. And I know, entrepreneurs or people starting a new company have to go all in. And it's really important that you really put in the effort, but you have to figure out a way to, take dinner time off and be with the family, put the kids to bed, then work afterwards.
Well, that balance, as you said, if you can get that right, it's going to make your life a lot better.
We were fortunate,
Yeah.
to do that.
Sheila?
I mean, just to kind of piggyback on that, obviously family has always been like so important to me personally.
Yeah.
And I was raised in such a loving family that, that always was paramount. So when I was 25, though, I think people that met me then and see me now would not even believe that it's the same person. I didn't have the confidence that I did then. And I built that over time. But I think a lot of the knocks that I took early as a kid, and all of that, and that helped me to be who I am. So I would say, like to my 25-year-old, hold on, the best is coming. I feel like, even like today is just, it's the best part of my life. every stage has been the best part. But I think people told us like grandchildren would change your life. And even though they live in San Francisco and Chicago, I cannot tell you how different my life is today. It's like we went to Japan for 3 weeks, but the trip was just richer and funner because, number one, I wasn't worrying about the company anymore, which I was always the worrier of, like, making sure everybody's doing their job and, making sure we're getting that next sale and all of that. That was always on me. And there were times when that was extremely difficult to know. You are holding the cards for so many people, their livelihood. So if you don't sell this contract, they're not going to get, like that. And Dane and I, 100%, we always known for paying people even what they're worth or maybe more, because we really believed in that was the right thing to do. So I'd just say, hang on, the best is coming, and here we are.
And related to that, in the best is coming, you made a point earlier of those knocks you took earlier in life, being the only brown girl and facing that prejudice, that just made you stronger.
Made you stronger. I mean,
you don't see it at the time, for sure.
And honestly, it could take you down.
Oh, absolutely.
Or it could take you up. And it depends on how you respond to it. And that's what I try to tell. I mean, Dane and I mentor lots of kids, lots of people now. We've helped start national mentoring efforts and doing actually some for our favorite University of Florida, chemical engineering, because we're on the advisory board now. And so we're going down there next week to help them with that. And, just I think the big thing is giving back. That was also, I think, makes your life so rich. I'm, haven't mentioned, but I'm the board chair of Erlanger, and the work that Erlanger does is so important to our community. And I think, just making sure, Dane and I have been involved in Girls Inc. and of course very involved in GPS, the Discovery Museum, the Tivoli, everything. We want to support everything. We try to support. We support a lot of them and really at a good level, but we love our community, and it does so much for us, makes our life richer. So we're happy that we can give back.
Well, you guys are not only a success story, but you obviously are an important cog in moving this town forward from that perspective too, being involved with everything that you're doing, really support the community, and you're ours. You're Chattanoogans.
Yeah, we are.
And we're glad you're here. And I really want to thank you for coming in and having this conversation. I think it's, I know for me it's very helpful, but I think our listeners will get a lot out of it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having us. Thanks for doing this to tell some of these stories sometimes that don't get told.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed doing it.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to My Morning Cup, a podcast by Costa Media Advisors. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend. I release a new episode each week, so be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts.